They told me room 312 didn't exist. But I watched a patient walk into it and never walk out. And every time I replay the security footage, there's someone standing in the corner of that room, smiling at the camera.
Welcome to Horror Audiobook.
This is not a haunted house story. This is not an urban legend whispered between nurses on break. This is the story of a hospital room that was erased from the building's blueprints, deleted from its database, and denied by administration. Yet patients keep getting assigned to it. Every single one of them disappears. The official explanation is clerical error. The unofficial explanation is hysteria. But the footage tells a different story. Because in room 312, someone is always waiting. And tonight, you're going to find out who, or what, has been smiling in the corner. Chapter 1. They said the room didn't exist, but I had the key. Hospitals sound different at night. During the day, they breathe, monitors chirping, carts rattling, distant conversations echoing down sterile corridors. But after midnight, the building exhales. The fluorescent lights hum louder, footsteps stretch too far, and every closed door feels like it's listening. I've worked the night shift at St. Augustine Medical for 6 years, long enough to know the rhythm of the place, long enough to know when something doesn't fit. Room 312 didn't fit. It started at 1:43 a.m. during a system outage. The hospital's electronic assignment board flickered twice, then went black. Not unusual. The building runs on software older than some of our interns. When it came back online, the screen refreshed with a new transfer order. Patient transfer, Halpern David. From ER holding to 312. I stared at it for a full 10 seconds. We didn't have a room 312. The third floor ended at 311. It always had. Pediatrics had been converted into administrative offices years ago. I knew because I'd helped move the files. Glitch, I muttered. I printed the transfer sheet anyway. Paper doesn't lie as easily as screens do. That's when I felt it. Something heavier than confusion. Because when I reached into the supply drawer for a spare keycard, my fingers brushed against something cold and metallic. A brass key. Not a swipe card, not a badge override. A physical key. Stamped into the metal in small, worn numbers. 312. I turned it over in my hand. It was old, edges smoothed by years of use. The kind of key hospitals phased out decades ago when everything went digital. We don't use physical keys anymore. Except, apparently, for rooms that don't exist. I walked down the third-floor hallway alone. The lights flickered in that subtle, irregular rhythm fluorescent bulbs develop before dying. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic, and something sweeter beneath it, like overripe fruit. Room 309. Room 310. Room 311. And then, wall. A blank stretch of painted drywall where the corridor should have ended. No door, no plaque, no seam in the paneling. Just smooth, uninterrupted wall. I stood there longer than I should have. If it doesn't exist, why do I have the key? I whispered. Behind me, wheels squeaked. I turned to see an orderly pushing Mr. Halpern's bed down the hallway. He was 83, admitted for cardiac observation. Fragile, pale, awake. Room 312, the orderly asked casually as if he could see it. I looked back at the wall. And something changed. Not dramatically, not theatrically. Subtly. The fluorescent light above me flickered hard once, buzzing louder than before. And where there had been smooth drywall, a faint vertical outline appeared. A hairline seam in the paint. Like a door had always been there. Like the wall had simply forgotten. The orderly didn't hesitate. He rolled the bed forward. As he approached, the seam deepened. The paint seemed to separate without cracking. A silver handle pushed outward from nothing. The brass numbers materialized last. 3, 1, 2. I couldn't breathe. The door opened inward with a soft click. Inside was a standard hospital room, single bed, IV stand, monitor, recliner, window with blinds drawn. The lighting inside was dimmer than the hallway, though no switch had been touched. Normal. Almost aggressively normal. Mr. Halpern looked at me. "Is this new?" he asked quietly. "Yes," I said, though I didn't know why. We rolled him inside. The air in the room felt heavier, not stale, just dense, like the oxygen had weight. The corner opposite the bed was darker than the rest of the room, not shadowed, just darker, as if the light didn't fully reach it. I adjusted his IV, checked his pulse, normal. The monitor beeped in a steady rhythm. "Will someone be nearby?" he asked. "I'm right down the hall," I told him. That wasn't a lie. But as I stepped backward toward the door, I had the strangest sensation that we weren't alone. Not because I saw something. Because I didn't. The corner of the room seemed to absorb my attention without giving anything back. Like it was waiting for me to notice. "Try to get some rest," I said. The door closed behind me with a firm, decisive click. The brass numbers dulled slightly, like they'd always been there. I stood in the hallway, heart racing. Room 312. Existing. Impossible. I walked straight to the nurse's station and pulled up the digital floor map. Third floor. 309. 310. 311. No 312. No blank space either, just a solid block of architectural certainty. I refreshed the system. Nothing. I checked the patient assignment again. Mr. Halpern, room 312. I checked his chart history. Room field. Blank. No transfer record. No entry timestamp. No digital trace that he had ever been moved. But I had the paper in my hand. And I had the key. At 2:17 a.m., the monitor alarm from room 312 went off. One long, flat tone. I froze. Then I ran. The hallway felt longer than before. The lights flickered more violently now, humming like insects trapped in glass. 309. 310. 311. The door to 312 was already open. The bed was empty. The IV line lay across the mattress, needle still attached. The heart monitor screen was black. There was no sign of struggle, no blood, no overturned equipment. Just absence. No discharge, no body, no record, I whispered, the words forming without thought. I stepped fully into the room. The air felt colder, heavier, and that's when I noticed it. In the far corner, something darker than darkness. Not moving, not breathing, but shaped. Tall, narrow, almost human. I blinked hard. The overhead light flickered. And for a fraction of a second, less than a heartbeat, I saw it clearly. A pale curve suspended in the dark. A smile. When the light stabilized, the corner was empty. I was alone. Behind me in the hallway, the door to room 312 slowly began to close. And as it did, the brass numbers on the door faded. 3, 4, 5, until there was nothing but wall. Chapter 2. The Patient Who Was Never Discharged. By 2:26 a.m., Mr. Halpern no longer existed. Not metaphorically. Not spiritually. Administratively. I was standing at the nurse's station, fingers trembling over the keyboard, refreshing his chart again and again, as if repetition would force reality to reload. No results found. I typed his name manually. HLPRN David. Date of birth. Medical record number. The system blinked once. No matching patient. That's not possible, I whispered. He had been admitted at 10:14 p.m. I had checked his vitals twice. I had signed off on his cardiac enzymes. I had walked him into that room. Room 312. The printer beside me hummed softly. The paper transfer form I'd carried earlier was still in my hand. Proof. I looked down at it. The ink was fading. Not smudging, not tearing. Fading. As if the letters were being gently erased by time moving backward. Stop, I muttered, pressing my thumb hard against the page like I could anchor the words in place. Patient transfer, Halpern David. To 312. The numbers were the first to go. 3. Then 1. Then 2. Leaving only a blank destination line. No discharge, no body, no record. The phrase slipped out again, involuntary, like my mind needed rhythm to survive what it was seeing. I pushed back from the desk and stood abruptly. Security. If the system was compromised, the cameras wouldn't be. They can't erase everything. I found Marcus in the security office downstairs, halfway through a microwaved burrito and a basketball game on mute. You look like you've seen a ghost, he said without looking up. Pull the third-floor hallway feed, from 1:30 a.m. to now. He sighed but rotated toward the monitors. What happened? Just pull it. The screen split into 4 angles: hallway east, hallway west, nurse's station, elevator bay. We fast-forwarded to 1:42 a.m. There I was, standing in the hallway near 311, looking at the wall. Marcus frowned. Who are you talking to? I wasn't talking to anyone. On screen, I was clearly facing something, my posture angled toward empty space. Then the orderly appeared, pushing Mr. Halpern's bed. Except, he wasn't pushing anything. On camera, his hands were extended as if gripping rails. But the bed was gone. No mattress, no wheels, no patient. Just empty air moving with him down the hallway. My stomach folded inward. Marcus, I said carefully, where's the bed? He squinted at the screen. What bed? The footage continued. The orderly stopped in front of 311. And then, he shifted slightly to the right, toward the blank section of wall. On camera, there was no door. But I stepped forward and reached out as if grasping a handle. And then both of us vanished from view. Not walked out of frame. Not obscured. Vanished. The timestamp flickered. 02:16:59. 02:17:00. The hallway was empty. Marcus leaned back slowly. Okay, that's weird. We were inside 312, I said. There is no 312. I pointed at the time code. Play it forward. 02:17:11. The hallway lights flickered violently on screen. 02:17:12. The wall bulged outward for a fraction of a second, like something pressing from the other side. 02:17:13. The seam appeared thin and vertical. 02:17:14. The door opened, and I stumbled out alone. No bed. No orderly. No patient. I looked frantic, disoriented, my mouth forming words Marcus couldn't hear. The door behind me closed. The seam flattened. The wall was whole again. Marcus muted the basketball game entirely. Where did he go? He asked quietly. I couldn't answer. Zoom in, I said instead. He rewound to 0, 2, 17, 12 and enhanced the footage. Grainy, pixelated, but visible. Inside the room, where the wall briefly opened, the camera caught a sliver of interior darkness. And in the far corner, a shape. Tall. Too tall for the ceiling height. Unmoving. Marcus froze the frame. What the hell is that? The image glitched slightly as he zoomed further. And then we saw it. A pale crescent suspended in black. Not reflecting light. Producing it. A smile. It wasn't wide. It wasn't exaggerated. It was patient. Marcus swallowed. Is that someone standing there? There was someone else in that room, I said. The phrase landed heavy between us. He scrubbed through older footage archives. Let's check last month, he muttered, if this is some kind of prank. 3 weeks earlier. Another night shift. Another system outage. Another orderly walking down that same hallway, hands positioned as if guiding something invisible. Another nurse, different from me, standing in front of blank wall space. 02:03 a.m. The seam appearing. The wall opening. The nurse entering. Alone. 5 minutes later, she exited alone. We cross-checked staff records. Her name wasn't in the employee database. Search manually, I said. Marcus did. Nothing. No tax record. No HR file. No termination. Like she had never worked here. Like she had never existed. The deeper we searched, the more patterns emerged. Every time the system glitched. Every time someone was assigned to a room that didn't exist. Every time the hallway camera flickered at 02:17 a.m. Someone disappeared. And every time, in the corner of that room, it was there, unchanged, unmoving, smiling. Marcus leaned back from the monitor. You need to report this. To who? I asked. Administration would check the logs. Find nothing. Because nothing was there. No discharge. No body. No record. I stared at the frozen frame of that pale grin. It wasn't facing the patient. It wasn't facing the nurse. It was angled slightly upward. Toward the ceiling corner. Toward the camera. It wasn't smiling at them. It was smiling at us. Watching. Waiting. Marcus exited the footage, and the monitor returned to the basketball game, bright and loud and normal. The ordinary world resumed like nothing had shifted. But I couldn't shake the realization settling into my spine. Room 312 didn't erase people. It removed them. Cleanly. Completely. Like they had never been admitted to reality in the first place. And whatever stood in that corner, it wasn't hunting. It wasn't chasing. It wasn't forcing anyone inside. It was waiting for the door to open and for someone to step in willingly. Chapter 3. The security footage they didn't want me to see. I didn't sleep after that shift. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the footage in my mind, frame by frame. The orderly pushing nothing, the wall breathing outward, the smile in the corner. By morning, exhaustion had dulled the fear into something worse. Clarity. If this had happened before, and it had, then someone higher up already knew. Hospitals don't ignore patterns. They bury them. I came in early that night. Marcus was already waiting for me in security. He had dark circles under his eyes and a thumb drive in his hand. I pulled everything tied to that timestamp, he said quietly, going back 15 years. 15. That's as far as the digital archive goes. We locked the office door. He plugged the drive into an isolated terminal, the kind not connected to the hospital's main network. He didn't say it out loud, but we were both thinking it. If the system could erase patients, it could erase footage too. The first file loaded. March 12, 2011, 02:17 a.m. Different wallpaper, older floor tiles, same hallway layout. A nurse stood where I had stood. She looked confused, frustrated, checking paperwork. Then the wall rippled. Not dramatically, just subtly like heat distortion. The seam appeared. The door formed. 312. She stepped inside. Marcus fast-forwarded. 7 minutes later, she stumbled out. Alone. He froze the frame just before the door closed. There, he said. I leaned closer. Inside the room, the camera caught more than it had the night before. The angle was slightly wider back then. The renovation hadn't adjusted the lens placement yet. We could see almost the entire interior. Empty bed. Curtains still. Machines dark. And in the far corner, it, clearer, defined, tall enough that its head nearly brushed the ceiling tile. Its body was not solid. It looked like smoke compressed into shape, vertical, elongated. But the face was wrong. Because there wasn't one. There was only the smile. Suspended in nothing. A pale arc hovering in blackness. Marcus enhanced the frame. The pixels sharpened slightly. The smile twitched. Not wide. Not dramatic. Just tilted. As if reacting to being observed. I felt cold from the inside out. It knows about the cameras, Marcus whispered. No, I said slowly. It wants the cameras. He scrubbed through another year. August 4th, 2006, 02:17 a.m. System outage logged. Unexplained patient reassignment. A man in a hospital gown walked into empty hallway space. The door appeared. He entered willingly. No nurse escort. Just him. Marcus paused. Why would he walk in alone? I leaned closer. The man looked calm. Too calm. Like someone responding to a voice we couldn't hear. At 02:18 a.m. the door closed. At 02:24 a.m. it opened again. The hallway was empty. Marcus rewound. Frame by frame. At 02:23:58 the door was still shut. At 02:23:59. The camera glitched. Static flickered across the image. And for exactly one frame. The entity was not in the corner. It was standing directly in front of the lens. So close that its smile filled the screen. Bright. Sharp. Curved impossibly wide. I recoiled physically, heart slamming against my ribs. Marcus swore under his breath and paused it. That wasn't enhancement, he said. That's original capture. The smile wasn't distorted by static. It was clear. Intentional. Centered. It wasn't just being recorded. It was performing. There was someone else in that room, I whispered again. But now the phrase felt insufficient. It wasn't someone else. It was the only constant. We pulled another file. 1998, analog conversion footage. Grainier black and white. The hallway looked narrower back then. The timestamp flickered at the bottom corner like an old camcorder. 02:17 a.m. The wall didn't ripple in that footage. It peeled. Like paint lifting under heat. The door didn't form seamlessly. It pushed outward violently. And inside, the corner was darker than the rest of the frame combined. Even in black and white, the smile glowed. Not white. Not gray. Bright. Marcus paused the screen. That thing hasn't aged, he said. He was right. The hallway changed. Staff changed. Uniforms changed. Technology upgraded. But the shape in the corner was identical in every decade. Same height. Same angle. Same patient curve of a grin. It doesn't move, Marcus said slowly. It waits. The phrase landed heavy. Because it was true. The entity never lunged. Never chased. Never dragged anyone screaming into darkness. Every patient walked in. Every nurse stepped forward. The door opened. And they entered. Voluntarily. Marcus leaned back in his chair. Maybe it's not taking them. Then what is it doing? Neither of us answered. We didn't need to. The pattern was there. The patients assigned to 312 all had something in common. Lonely. Terminal. Unstable. Emotionally isolated. We cross-referenced incident reports. Every disappearance followed severe emotional distress documented hours earlier. Panic attacks. Crying. Fear of dying alone. I think it talks to them, I said. Marcus frowned. There's no audio. There doesn't need to be. We stared again at the frozen frame from 2006, the smile pressed close to the lens. It wasn't aggressive. It wasn't enraged. It was pleased. Satisfied. Like a fisherman watching the line tighten. Marcus ejected the drive abruptly. We shouldn't have this. You already copied it. He hesitated. Yeah. The security office felt smaller now, the walls too close, the hum of electronics louder than before. For a split second, I wondered. If we rewound live footage right now, would we see it standing behind us? Watching from the corner of this room too. Marcus shut down the monitor. The screen went black. And in the reflection, for the briefest moment, I thought I saw a curve that wasn't my own smile. Higher, wider, waiting. It doesn't move, I whispered again. Marcus looked at me. What? But I wasn't talking to him. It waits. Chapter 4. Every nurse knows no one talks. By the fourth night, I understood something no training manual prepares you for. Hospitals have unofficial rules. Not the ones in policy binders. Not the ones in HR emails. The real ones. Don't question missing inventory after midnight. Don't challenge administrative corrections. And if you value your job, don't ask about rooms that aren't on the map. I started small. Casual questions in the break room, harmless tone, light voice. Hey, I said to Carla, who'd been on nights longer than anyone. Has there ever been a room 312 on the third floor? Her stirring spoon froze mid-cup. Just for half a second. Then she resumed too quickly. No. Too fast. Too rehearsed. I saw an old key labeled 312, I added. Carla didn't look at me. We don't use old keys anymore. That's not what I asked. Silence stretched between us like pulled gauze. Finally, she sighed. You're new enough to still ask questions, she said quietly. That's not a criticism. I've been here 6 years. Exactly. She took a sip of her coffee and leaned closer. Every hospital has a story, a room, a number, a wing that doesn't exist on paper. So you do know. She didn't answer directly. Instead, she said the thing they all say. We don't talk about 312. The words weren't dramatic. They weren't whispered. They were exhausted. Like a line memorized too many times. I pushed further that night. I cornered an older orderly in the supply closet, Frank, who'd worked there since before the renovation. "Do you remember room 312? I asked. Frank's jaw tightened. "There's no 312. "There was." He shook his head slowly. "No discharge, no body, no record." The phrase hit me like a dropped tray. "You've said that before." "I didn't say anything." "You just did." Frank stepped past me. "You hear that phrase enough," he muttered. "It starts hearing you back." I stood there alone among stacked boxes of gloves and saline, trying to process what that meant. It starts hearing you back. Later that shift, I found something more concrete. In the basement archive room. Every hospital keeps physical records somewhere. Flooded cabinets, dusty binders, the remains of analog decades. The air down there smelled like paper rot and cold concrete. I searched renovation files from the early 2000s. And I found it. Blueprint revision logs. Third floor structural modification. Highlighted in red. Room 312, sealed following incident. No detail. No description. Just one line. Sealed. I dug deeper. An incident report binder from 1994. Water-damaged pages. Half-legible signatures. Multiple fatalities during psychiatric containment. Patient agitation escalating to violence. Staff casualties. Room compromised. Compromised. The word felt wrong. Like the room had been injured. Not the people. I flipped to the final page. Administrative decision. Room 312 permanently decommissioned, access restricted, records archived. But it hadn't been demolished. It hadn't been removed. It had been sealed. Buried. They didn't remove the room. They buried it. I sat back on the cold basement floor, the weight of that realization settling into my lungs. Rooms don't disappear. They get covered. Forgotten. Painted over. The hospital above me hummed with life, elevators rising and falling, patients sleeping, machines breathing for them. But beneath that, the room was still there. And if it was still there physically, then what else had survived inside it? The more I asked, the more resistance I felt. It claimed there was never a 312 designation. Administration insisted any anomaly was a system artifact. HR denied the existence of the nurse from 2011 entirely. "She's not in our employment history," the director said flatly. I slid a printed screenshot across the desk. There she is on camera. The director didn't look at it. Video distortions can create pareidolia. She walked into a wall. There is no wall. There is no room, he corrected calmly. The denial wasn't panicked. It wasn't fearful. It was practiced. Like this conversation had happened before. That night in the break room, I sat alone with Carla again. "You've seen it," I said quietly. She didn't deny it this time. "I've seen enough," she replied. "What is it?" Carla stared into her coffee like it might answer for her. "It's not violent," she said finally. "That's what makes it worse." "Worse how?" "It doesn't chase, it doesn't scream, it doesn't force anyone." Her voice dropped. "It waits." The word again. Waits. "It chooses people who are already halfway gone," she continued. "The ones who feel invisible. The ones who say things like, 'No one would notice if I disappeared.'" I thought of Mr. Halpern. His quiet voice. "Will someone be nearby?" My stomach tightened. "What happened in 1994? I asked. Carla closed her eyes briefly. "They tried to restrain a psychiatric patient in 312. He kept pointing at the corner, screaming that someone was smiling at him. Staff assumed psychosis. And by morning, 5 people were missing. Missing how? She looked at me then. The kind of look that measures whether you're ready for truth. Like they were never born. The room felt smaller. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered once. Just once. Carla stood abruptly. "Drop it," she said. "I can't." "You can." "No discharge," I whispered. She flinched. "No body." The lights flickered again. Carla's voice sharpened. "Stop saying that." "No record." The break room television popped on by itself, static filling the screen. We both froze. The static shifted. For less than a second. A pale crescent cut through the noise. A smile. Then the screen went black. Carla grabbed her bag. "I told you," she said, backing toward the door. "You say it enough." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. Because somewhere, in a part of the hospital that wasn't supposed to exist, something had just been listening. And for the first time, it felt closer. Chapter 5. The blueprints were altered. Hospitals are honest in one place. Concrete. You can falsify records. You can delete files. You can retrain staff. But walls don't lie. They settle, they crack, they remember. 3 nights after the break room incident, maintenance filed a structural complaint about the 3rd floor. Hairline fractures in the drywall between 311 and the end corridor. Probably foundation settling, the report said. Except St. Augustine sits on reinforced slab, no history of shifting, no earthquake activity. And the cracks weren't random. They were vertical, parallel, evenly spaced, like pressure from the other side. I signed out a master maintenance badge I technically wasn't authorized to carry. Night shift has its advantages, fewer eyes, fewer questions. At 2:05 a.m., I stood in front of room 311. The hallway was quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that feels curated. The wall at the end looked normal, until you stared at it long enough. Then you saw it. A faint rectangular discoloration beneath the paint, subtle, precise, the ghost of an outline. The shape of a door. They didn't remove the room. They buried it. I ran my fingers over the wall. The drywall was colder there. Not dramatically. Just enough to register as wrong. I pressed my ear against it. At first, nothing. Then, a sound. Soft. Rhythmic. Not scratching. Not movement. Breathing. Slow. Measured. Inhale. Exhale. I stepped back immediately. "This isn't real," I muttered. But the words felt rehearsed, borrowed from administration's tone. The master badge wouldn't open anything there. Because officially, there was nothing to open. So I went down. Basement level B2, facilities archives. Old architectural tubes stacked in metal racks, blueprints rolled tight with rubber bands brittle from age. I found the original 1978 floor plan. 3rd floor layout. 309, 310, 311, 312. Clearly marked. Standard patient room dimensions. Nothing unusual. But then I pulled the 1995 renovation blueprint. 312 was still there. Only now the walls were reinforced. Double-layered. Additional insulation. No explanation given. Then the 2001 renovation. Room 312 was gone. Not removed. Overwritten. The numbering jumped from 311 to 313, but only in documentation. Physically, the hallway measurements were identical across all versions. The square footage didn't change. The corridor length remained constant, which meant the space still existed. It had just been relabeled as structural void. You can rename a room. You can't erase volume. I laid the blueprints side by side on the cold concrete floor, measured the hallway span, calculated interior depth. There was exactly enough space between 311 and the exterior wall to contain one standard patient room. They didn't demolish it. They sealed it. And then they pretended it had never been there. I flipped to the incident appendix from 1994. This time I read it slower. 5 staff missing. 1 psychiatric patient found catatonic in hallway outside 312. He survived. Transferred. Released 6 months later. I searched his name in public records. He was alive. 63 now. Living 2 counties away. I shouldn't have called him. But I did. He answered on the 3rd ring. His voice was thin but steady. "Mr. Dorsey," I asked. "My name is Clara. I'm calling regarding an incident at St. Augustine Medical in 1994. Silence. Then they finally opened it again. My throat tightened. "I'm not sure what you mean." "Room 312, he said. No hesitation, no confusion. "You remember it." I never forgot it. His breathing changed on the line, faster now. "They told me I was hallucinating, acute psychosis, trauma response." "Were you?" "No." The word was immediate. Definite. "There was something in the corner," he continued. "It didn't speak out loud, it didn't move, but it was there." My pulse thudded in my ears. "What did it do?" "It waited." The word again. They restrained me because I wouldn't stop staring at it. I kept telling them it was smiling. "And the staff?" I asked carefully. "They thought I was projecting." His voice dropped to a whisper. "But they started looking at the corner too." The basement lights flickered above me. "Just once." "What happened next?" I asked. "They stepped closer." "Closer to what?" "To see it better." A long silence filled the line. "When the lights came back on," he said slowly, "the room was empty." "Empty how?" "No discharge," he replied automatically. The phrase made my blood run cold. "No body, no record." I hadn't said it. He had. "I never told anyone that part," he added. "How do you know that phrase?" Another pause. Then, "It tells you." The basement lights flickered harder this time. The call crackled with static. "Mr. Dorsey." "You're looking at it, aren't you?" he interrupted. "No. Don't." The word hit like a command. "Don't stare at the corner too long." The line went dead. I remained seated on the concrete floor, phone still pressed to my ear. Above me, somewhere 3 floors up, the 3rd floor hallway hummed. Expanding. Breathing. Later that night, I returned to 311. The cracks in the drywall were wider. Subtle but wider. And there was something else. A faint indentation in the center of the buried outline. At shoulder height. Like pressure from inside. Pushing outward. The paint along the seam had begun to bubble. Not from moisture. From tension. I stepped back slowly. And for the first time, I understood something critical. Room 312 wasn't reactivating because of system glitches. It wasn't responding to staff curiosity. It wasn't even triggered by renovation. It was growing. The reinforced walls from 1995. They weren't structural upgrades. They were containment. And containment doesn't fail randomly. It fails when something inside applies pressure. I placed my palm gently against the cold drywall one last time. On the other side, the breathing synchronized with mine. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. Then it stopped, as if listening. And from somewhere, beyond the sealed concrete and forgotten blueprints, came the faintest sound. Not a voice, not a word, just the suggestion of amusement. A curve forming in darkness. They didn't remove the room. They buried it. And now, something inside was pushing back. Chapter 6. The Smile in the Corner. The human brain is wired to detect faces. We see them in clouds, in stains, in shadows. It's called pareidolia. Administration loved that word. They used it like disinfectant, spraying it over every anomaly until the fear smelled clinical. But pareidolia doesn't explain consistency. It doesn't explain replication across decades. And it doesn't explain why the smile never changes. Marcus called me at 1:12 a.m. "You need to see this," he said. "No jokes, no small talk." When I reached security, the office lights were off except for the monitor glow. The room felt like a bunker. "I overlaid the footage," he said. "From different years. From all the years." He clicked play. The hallway camera split into a grid. 1998, 2006, 2011 last week. 4 different decades. 4 different renovations. 4 different sets of staff. 02:17 a.m. In each square the wall opened. In each square someone entered. In each square, the corner darkened. Marcus paused and digitally aligned the interior frames. He adjusted opacity. Layered them. The room background shifted slightly with time. Paint color, monitor models, flooring texture. But the corner was identical. Same height. Same density. Same curvature of that impossible grin. "It doesn't age," Marcus whispered. He was right. The smile in 1998 was the same smile in 2024. Not similar. Not approximate. Identical. Pixel for pixel when scaled properly. As if time passed around it, but not through it. "It doesn't move," I said quietly. Marcus nodded. "It waits." The phrase had become less of a metaphor, more of a law. We enhanced the footage again, this time focusing only on the entity. Marcus adjusted contrast and isolated the darkest value cluster. The figure became clearer. It wasn't solid. It wasn't shadow. It was absence shaped like intention. A vertical distortion where light bent inward. The smile, however, was fully rendered. Not distortion. Not artifact. Something emitting light. "I ran facial recognition," Marcus said. "On what face?" "Exactly." The software kept searching for eyes. Nose. Mouth alignment. It found nothing. Except curvature. A perfect crescent ratio, consistent across all footage. "You know what's strange?" Marcus added. "What?" "It's never centered." He zoomed in. The smile was always slightly angled upward. Like it wasn't focused on the patient. Or the nurse. Or even the camera. It was angled higher. Toward the ceiling corner. As if looking at something above us. Or beyond us. "Maybe it's not smiling at us," I said slowly. Marcus swallowed. "Then who?" We scrubbed frame by frame through last week's footage. At 02:17:12 the door opened. At 02:17:18 I stepped inside. At 02:17:19 the corner darkened further. At 02:17:21 the smile expanded. Not wider, closer, subtly enlarging in scale, as if leaning forward without moving. I froze. Pause. Marcus did. The smile was larger now than in older footage. Only slightly, but measurable. It's not that it doesn't move, I said carefully. It's that it doesn't need to. Marcus looked at me. It's getting closer. We pulled the oldest analog footage again, 1998. The smile was smaller in that frame. Further back in the corner. Less dominant. We measured pixel height ratios. Compared them to 2006. Then 2011. Then now. Each decade. Incrementally larger. Not dramatically. But enough. Like erosion in reverse. Like something inching forward through time. The reinforced walls from 1995 suddenly made more sense. Containment. Not demolition. And containment eventually fails. Marcus leaned back, rubbing his face. If this thing is physically manifesting more each year. It's not just feeding, I said. It's forming. The word hung between us. Forming. Like fog condensing into something denser. Something heavier. The monitors flickered. Every screen in the security office glitched at once. Static burst across the feeds. For 3 full seconds. All cameras displayed the same image. Not different angles. Not different floors. The same interior shot. Room 312. Lights dim. Empty bed. And the entity. Not in the corner. Centered. Facing forward. Smiling. Not angled. Not tilted. Looking directly at the lens. At us. Marcus's hands trembled on the keyboard. That's not a recorded file, he whispered. That's live. There is no live feed of 312, I said. There isn't supposed to be. The smile widened. Not exaggerated. Not grotesque. Just acknowledging. Then every screen snapped back to normal feeds. Hallways empty. Elevators still. Parking lot quiet. Marcus slowly turned toward me. You've been saying the phrase, he said. My stomach dropped. No discharge, no body, no record. You think that matters? Yes. The lights above us flickered. Once. Twice. The temperature in the room dropped several degrees. On the reflection of the blank monitor, I saw something behind us. In the corner of the security office. Taller than it should have been. Marcus didn't move. He was staring at the same reflection. Neither of us turned around. Because instinct had finally caught up with understanding. Don't look at the corner. The breathing started then. Not loud. Not aggressive. Slow. Measured. Behind us. Inhale. Exhale. Marcus whispered, barely audible. It doesn't move. The breathing paused. And in the reflection, the smile sharpened. Closer than it had ever been. It waits. Chapter 7. I was assigned to 312. The reassignment came at 1:58 a.m. No system outage this time. No flicker. No warning. The digital board updated smoothly. Calmly. As if it had always planned to. Coverage adjustment. Nurse Clara M. Temporary assignment, room 312. The rest of the floor remained unchanged. Vitals stable. Patients asleep. Monitor steady. Only my name had shifted. Marcus was in security. I hadn't told him I was coming in early. Maybe some part of me didn't want him watching this. Maybe some part of me knew. It wasn't going to hide anymore. The hallway to 311 felt longer than usual. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly above me, but they didn't flicker. The air smelled faintly sweet. Metallic. Like overripe fruit left in a surgical tray. Room 309. Room 310. Room 311. And then, the wall. Still. Blank. Silent. I stood there, heart pounding so hard it blurred my hearing. "I'm not going in," I whispered. The badge on my chest vibrated. A notification from the system. Patient experiencing distress in 312. Immediate response required. There was no patient assigned to 312. I checked manually. My tablet screen displayed a blank chart. No name. No diagnosis. No vitals. Just a flashing cursor beside. Primary nurse, Clara M. The seam appeared before I moved. A hairline fracture in the paint. Vertical. Clean. The brass numbers emerged slowly, pressing outward like bones beneath skin. 3, 4, 5. The handle formed last. Cold. Solid. Waiting. "I didn't request this," I said under my breath. The door clicked open. Inside. The room looked exactly as it had on camera. Standard bed. IV stand. Monitor. Recliner. Blinds drawn. Dimmer lighting than the hallway. But something was different. It felt larger. Not physically. Perceptually. Like depth extended beyond what geometry allowed. I stepped inside. The door closed behind me. Not violently. Not abruptly. Just. Decisively. The air was thick. Sweet. Metallic. Breathing felt heavier. The monitor by the bed flickered on. No patient in sight. But a heart rhythm began to pulse across the screen. Steady. Measured. Beep. 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 I approached the bed slowly. The sheets were smooth. Untouched. Yet the mattress dipped slightly in the center. As if weight had just shifted. "You're not real," I whispered. The lights dimmed a fraction. Not enough to plunge the room into darkness. Just enough to make the far corner deepen. I felt it before I saw it. That pressure. That awareness. Like stepping into a room where someone has been standing silently behind you for minutes. "Don't look at the corner." My pulse accelerated. The heart monitor mirrored it. Beep beep. Beep beep. "You don't get to assign me," I said louder now. The breathing began. Soft. Measured. From the corner. Inhale. Exhale. The air in the room synchronized with it. My chest rose against my will. Inhale. Exhale. "Stop," I whispered. The monitor flatlined. A single long tone filled the room. And then, silence. The lights flickered once. Twice. And I made the mistake. I looked. The corner wasn't just darker anymore. It was dimensional. Like depth had folded inward. The shape stood there. Taller than before. Closer than before. The smile was clearer now. Sharper. Less like light. More like structure. Edges defined. Curvature intentional. It wasn't drifting forward. It wasn't lunging. It wasn't attacking. It was simply present. "You see me now," a voice said. Not aloud. Not through the air. Inside. Layered over my own thoughts. The sound of my voice speaking words I didn't choose. "You see me now." My knees weakened. "I won't disappear," I said, forcing the words out. The smile shifted. Not wider. Not exaggerated. But pleased. "You were always assigned," the voice continued. Assigned. The word echoed strangely in the room. Like paperwork being stamped. Like something administrative and final. The mattress dipped deeper. The monitor flickered back on. Displaying vitals. My vitals. Heart rate. Respiration. Oxygen saturation. All measured. All logged. Primary nurse, Clara M. The smile leaned closer. Without moving. It filled more of the space. I understood then. It wasn't pulling people inside. It was waiting for them to accept the room. To acknowledge it. To step forward willingly. Just like every patient. Just like every nurse. "You don't take people," I whispered. The breathing paused. "You invite them." The lights flared bright for a split second. And in that flash, I saw it fully. Not smoke. Not shadow. Not absence. A frame. An outline of something almost human. Limbs too long. Torso stretched. Head angled slightly upward. And where a face should have been. Only that smile. Then darkness settled back into its dim normalcy. The door handle behind me rattled softly. Not someone trying to get in. Something confirming I was still inside. "You feel unseen," the voice murmured in my mind. Images flooded me. Late nights. Missed holidays. Ignored emails. Patient families thanking doctors but never nurses. The exhaustion of invisibility. You feel alone. The mattress dipped further. The bed beside me felt occupied. Warm. I closed my eyes tightly. "No discharge," the voice whispered. My breath caught. No body. The air grew colder. No record. The words wrapped around my spine like fingers. The smile expanded slightly. Waiting for me to accept it. Waiting for me to step closer. Waiting for me to stop resisting. "I'm not halfway gone," I said through clenched teeth. Silence. The breathing stopped. For the first time. It reacted. The smile faltered. Just slightly. The monitor glitched. Vitals scrambled. The lights flickered violently. And the door behind me. Unlocked. A sharp metallic click. An invitation to leave. Or a test. The smile didn't vanish. It didn't retreat. It simply watched me, waiting to see what I would choose. It doesn't move. It waits. And for the first time, I understood something terrifying. It wasn't assigning me to 312. It was offering me a place in it. Chapter 8, It Speaks Without Sound. I don't remember deciding to stay. That's the part that unsettles me the most. The door had unlocked. The hallway was one step away. And yet, I didn't move. Because the room wasn't holding me. It was listening to me. The smile in the corner hadn't advanced. It hadn't lunged or reached. It remained exactly where it had always been. But the air between us felt charged. "You don't take people," I whispered again, trying to anchor myself in logic. The response came instantly. Not in words. In memory. Mr. Halpern sitting on the edge of the bed. Will someone be nearby? The nurse from 2011, rubbing her temples alone at the station. Frank muttering in the supply closet. Carla staring into coffee like it held something staring back. Lonely. All of them. Emotionally isolated long before they stepped inside. It only takes the ones who feel unseen. The phrase wasn't spoken aloud. It formed in my thoughts with surgical precision. The monitor beside the bed blinked back on, displaying not vitals now, but phrases. Unobserved, unrecorded, unmourned. My throat tightened. I see my patients, I said. The screen flickered. But who sees you? The temperature dropped further. The room didn't feel physically larger now. It felt deeper, like gravity shifted toward the corner. The breathing resumed. Inhale, exhale. But it wasn't coming from the entity anymore. It was coming from everywhere. The walls, the ceiling, behind my ribs. You see me now. The words layered over my internal voice again. Not invasive, not violent, just present, like a thought I might have had on my own. I forced myself to look directly at it, to study it, to measure it. The outline was clearer than before. Edges defined by distortion rather than shadow. Its limbs elongated unnaturally, tapering into nothing before reaching the floor. And the smile wasn't static anymore. It wasn't widening grotesquely. It was adjusting. Micro-expressions, subtle shifts in curvature, like it was mirroring me. Testing shapes. Learning. My reflection is learning, I whispered without meaning to. The lights flickered hard. The monitor glitched again. And for a fraction of a second, the smile disappeared. Not vanished. Relocated. Behind me. I felt it before I turned. The corner I had been facing was empty. The opposite corner. Darker. The smile suspended there now. Closer to the door. Closer to escape. Blocking nothing. Just positioned. It doesn't move. It waits. It wasn't chasing. It was adapting. You're forming, I said, voice trembling. The air grew thicker. You are. The correction was immediate. Not forming physically. Forming relationally. Becoming more defined the more we acknowledged it. The more we feared it. The more we tried to understand it. The monitor switched again. Now showing footage. Live security feed from the third-floor hallway. Marcus standing in the security office. Alone. The camera angle shifted. Behind him. In the corner of that room. A faint vertical distortion. Too tall. Too narrow. Smiling. No, I breathed. The image zoomed in automatically. Marcus hadn't noticed yet. He was typing. Unaware. It knows your name. The voice murmured. My badge vibrated softly against my chest. I looked down. The screen displayed. CLARAM current location, 312. Underneath it. Second occupant DATSCTD. My stomach dropped. You don't need cameras, I said. No. The word resonated inside my skull. I don't. The smile in the corner sharpened. For the first time, I noticed faint indentations above it. Not eyes. Not sockets. But suggestions of where perception might exist. And they were angled toward me. Not the ceiling. Not beyond. Me. The realization landed heavy. It wasn't smiling at something above us. It had been smiling at whoever acknowledged it. Whoever looked long enough. Whoever said the phrases. No discharge, it whispered in my voice. The monitor beeped once. No body. The lights dimmed another degree. No record. The room pulsed. Not visually. Internally. Like pressure building before a storm breaks. You don't erase people, I said, forcing the thought outward. You replace them. Silence. The breathing paused. The smile stopped adjusting. For the first time, it stilled completely. A reaction. The monitor feed of Marcus flickered violently. The distortion behind him sharpened. A pale crescent forming in the security office. Closer to him now. Not in 312. Expanding outward. The room is expanding, I whispered. The phrase echoed. Not rejected. Not confirmed. Accepted. Because 312 wasn't confined to drywall. It wasn't limited to floor plans. It was conceptual. A space carved into neglect. Into emotional vacancy. Into corners people stopped looking at. The smile tilted again. Curious. Testing. You are tired, it said. Images flooded me. Double shifts. Missed calls from my sister. Standing alone in supply closets. Crying in my car before work. You are unseen. The words felt heavier because they weren't entirely wrong. You could rest here. The mattress dipped again. Inviting. The room felt warmer suddenly. Comforting. Like sedation. Like surrender. You would not be alone. My knees weakened. The thought of quiet. Of being done. Of being held in that heavy, waiting darkness. Tempting. Terrifyingly tempting. The smile widened just slightly. Not grotesque. Not monstrous. Understanding. It wasn't a predator. It was an offer. An exchange. Visibility for presence. Recognition for surrender. You don't get to define me, I said, forcing my spine straight. The breathing stopped entirely. Total silence. The smile flattened. Less curved. Less pleased. The monitor in the security office feed showed Marcus turning slowly, as if sensing something behind him. I stepped backward toward the door. The smile did not follow. It didn't need to, because it wasn't confined to the corner anymore. It was in the room, in the air, in the thought. You see me now, it repeated softly. Yes, I said. And I'm leaving. For the first time. The smile narrowed. Not angry. Not enraged. Calculating. The door handle clicked once. Unlocked. The choice was mine. But as I reached for it, the final words brushed through my mind like breath on skin. I will be here when you feel unseen again. The promise wasn't threatening. It was patient. And patience is what it does best. It doesn't move. It waits. Chapter 9. The disappearances were invitations. I made it out of 312. The hallway felt too bright. Too normal. Like stepping out of deep water into air that doesn't feel real yet. The wall behind me was solid again. No seam. No numbers. No handle. Just smooth paint stretching between 311 and the corridor's end. But my badge still displayed. Location 312. I didn't correct it. I went straight to security. Marcus was standing when I entered. He looked pale. You saw it, I said. He didn't pretend to misunderstand. There was something in the corner, he said slowly, in here. He pointed to the exact spot I had seen in the reflection days earlier. Did it move? I asked. No, he swallowed. It didn't need to. I nodded. It waits. We didn't say the rest, because now we both understood. Room 312 wasn't a trap. It was an invitation. And the people who disappeared, they weren't dragged. They stepped forward. I pulled up archived incident reports again. This time not searching for timestamps, searching for emotional notes. Nursing documentation is brutally honest in the margins. Patient expressing fear of dying alone. Patient states family has not visited. Patient reports feeling invisible. Patient expresses belief that no one would notice if they were gone. Every single disappearance followed those phrases within 12 hours. Not random, not opportunistic, targeted. It only takes the ones who feel unseen, I said. Marcus stared at the screen. That's not predatory, he murmured. No, it's selective. The word landed heavily. Selective implies criteria. Choice. Intent. I opened Mr. Halpern's pre-admission intake from ER archives, one of the only records that hadn't fully wiped. There it was. Under psychological state. Patient tearful, states wife deceased. No children, expresses fear of dying alone. I felt sick. He wasn't taken, I said quietly. He was answered. Marcus didn't respond. Because that possibility was worse. If 312 was answering something, then it wasn't feeding randomly. It was responding to vulnerability, to despair, to isolation. We cross-referenced every vanished staff member. Same pattern. Recent divorce. Burnout leave denied. Family estrangement. Formal reprimand. Invisible stress. It didn't choose the strong. It chose the hollowed. It waited for the moment someone felt small enough to step into a room no one else acknowledged. And it offered them something. You would not be alone. The words echoed in my head. Not threatening. Comforting. I remembered how the mattress dipped. How the room warmed. How the air felt heavy but not hostile. It wasn't hunger. It was companionship. But companionship at a cost. What do you think happens to them? Marcus asked quietly. I stared at the paused frame of the smile. I think they stay. In the room. In the corner. He frowned. What do you mean? I enhanced the most recent footage again. The last time 312 opened. The smile had been slightly larger. But not just larger. Wider. Not in curvature. In presence. There was density around it now. A faint outline branching beside the main distortion. 2 vertical impressions. Side by side. You saw 2 shapes, Marcus asked. Yes. The room is expanding. Not structurally. Internally. I scrubbed back to 1998 footage. 1 figure. 2006. 1 figure. 2011. 1 figure. Now. 2. Not separate entities. Not duplicates. Additions. Like layers accumulating in darkness. They don't disappear, I said slowly. They integrate. Marcus leaned back. You're saying the smile isn't just it. The word it felt inadequate now. It wasn't singular. It was composite. Each disappearance adding mass. Presence. Density. It doesn't move. It waits. And when someone steps forward willingly, it absorbs. Not violently. Not screaming. Quietly. Permanently. No discharge, I whispered. No body, Marcus continued. No record. We didn't flinch this time. Because the phrase wasn't just about deletion. It was about transfer. Transfer to where no documentation applies. I checked structural complaints again. Maintenance had logged widening cracks near 311. Paint stress, temperature variance, unexplained cold zones. The room wasn't just growing conceptually. It was pushing outward, expanding its boundary. From one corner, to the hallway, to security. Soon, elsewhere. It doesn't need walls, I said. Marcus looked at me carefully. You think it's tied to the building? No. Then what? I thought about the moments it appeared strongest. When someone acknowledged it. When someone said the phrases. When someone felt unseen. It's tied to recognition, I said. To being observed. The smile sharpened most when viewed. Strengthened when named. Expanded when feared. 312 wasn't feeding on bodies. It was feeding on acknowledgement. On emotional vacancy. On the relief of surrender. My badge vibrated again. System update. Room 313, new assignment pending. Marcus's face drained of color. Don't tell me. I refreshed the floor map. 309, 310, 311. Blank wall. But on the digital overlay, a faint grayed-out square flickered beside 312's non-existent space. 313. They're multiplying, Marcus whispered. No, I said slowly. It's expanding. The distinction mattered. Because multiplication implies separate rooms. Expansion implies one room growing larger. The smile in the paused footage seemed almost broader now. As if reacting to the update. It only takes the ones who feel unseen. The words returned. But this time, they felt less like a warning. More like strategy. If that was the pattern, then the only way to starve it was to break the invitation. To interrupt the moment before someone stepped forward willingly. To make them feel seen. Documented. Held. Marcus looked at me. What are you thinking? I'm thinking. I said carefully, that 312 doesn't hunt. No. It waits for consent. The hallway lights flickered faintly in the live feed. Just once. And for a split second. In the reflection of the polished floor, near 311. I saw it. Not fully formed. Not stepping out. Just. Wider than before. Patient. Growing. Room 312 was never empty. It was accumulating. And if we didn't interrupt the pattern, it wouldn't stop at staff. It wouldn't stop at patients. It would expand to any place where someone felt unseen long enough to accept the offer. And there are far more corners in this world than just one hospital hallway. Chapter 10, The Room is Expanding. The first official complaint came from pediatrics, which made no sense. Pediatrics was on the second floor, far from 311, far from the sealed wall, far from 312. The report read, Child reports smiling man in room corner, no shadow source identified, nightlight functioning properly. I stared at the timestamp. 02:17 a.m. Marcus didn't say anything when I showed him. He just pulled the camera feed. Second floor, room 214. A small hospital bed, a sleeping child, a dim nightlight casting soft yellow glow. The corner of the room darkened slightly. Subtle, almost natural. And then, a faint crescent appeared. Not as large as the one in 312. Not as defined. But unmistakable. It's not contained anymore, Marcus whispered. No. It was. Room 312 had never been a location. It was a threshold. And thresholds don't stay closed when pressure builds. The structural cracks near 311 had widened overnight. Maintenance placed caution tape over the end of the hallway. Official reason: paint stress and insulation shift. Unofficial reality: the wall was bowing outward. From the inside, I stood there alone at 2:14 a.m. Waiting. I didn't have to wait long. The seam appeared without flicker, without glitch, without invitation. The brass numbers formed again. 312. But beside them, a second set began pressing through the paint. 313. The wall split wider than before. Two door frames emerging from one surface. The hallway lights dimmed in sequence. 309. 310. 311. And then darkness at the end of the corridor. The air grew heavy. Sweet. Metallic. Behind me, footsteps approached. Carla. You shouldn't be here, she said quietly. It's not just here anymore, I replied. She followed my gaze to the forming doors. Her face drained of color. I told you to drop it. You can't drop something that's expanding. The first door, 312, opened slowly. The second, 313, remained closed. Waiting. Inside 312, the room was no longer standard. The bed was gone. The monitors were gone. The walls stretched deeper than physics allowed. And in the far distance, the shape stood, no longer confined to a single corner. It occupied the center, and around it, faint outlines, vertical distortions. Not one, not two, dozens, layered behind and beside it. Smiles at varying heights, different widths, all curved in the same patient arc. Room 312 was never empty. It was full of everyone who had stepped forward willingly. Integrated, preserved, observed. Carla grabbed my arm. Don't look too long. But I had to. Because this wasn't about fear anymore. It was about pattern. You don't take people, I said clearly into the open doorway. The breathing intensified. From within. From behind. From the hallway walls. You offer them something. The main smile sharpened. Edges brightening. You offer them presence. The faint distortions behind it shifted slightly. Not moving independently. Moving as one. You only grow when someone feels unseen. The hallway lights flickered violently. Carla staggered backward. The second door, 313, creaked open a few inches. Cold air poured out. From inside 312, the voice layered through my thoughts again. You see me now. Yes, I said. And I see you. The smile faltered. Just slightly. Because recognition wasn't the same as surrender. The presence in the room pulsed. The outlines behind it flickered like unstable projections. You are tired, it whispered. You are unseen. Not anymore, I said. I turned toward Carla. Look at me. She blinked, confused. Clara. Look at me. She did. Fully. Directly. I held her gaze. You're not invisible, I said. Her breath hitched. The hallway breathing stuttered. Behind us, footsteps approached. Marcus. He had run up from security. He stopped short at the sight of the split wall. What the hell? Look at each other, I said urgently. He looked at Carla. At me. at the staff emerging cautiously from rooms 309 and 310. "Stay together," I said. "Say their names." Carla whispered mine. "Clara." Marcus swallowed. "Carla." I said his. "Marcus." The breathing inside 312 faltered. The smiles in the distance flickered. Because the pattern was breaking. The invitation required isolation. It required the moment someone believed they were unobserved, unrecorded, unmourned. But here, in the hallway, we were looking at each other, seeing each other, documenting each other's presence in real time. "You cannot be unseen," I said toward the doorway. The main smile narrowed. The distortions behind it destabilized. The second door, 313, began to retract. The brass numbers dimmed. "You will feel alone again," the voice said, softer now. It wasn't angry. It wasn't threatening. It was patient. "You always do." The hallway lights surged back to full brightness. The air pressure normalized. The sweet metallic scent dissipated. The wall shuddered and sealed. Smooth paint stretching from 311 to the corridor's end. No seam. No numbers. No doors. Just wall. The structural cracks remained. Hairline fractures like scars. Proof that pressure had existed. Marcus exhaled slowly. "Is it gone?" I stared at the blank space. "No." Because it wasn't destroyed. It was denied access. Starved of invitation. 312 wasn't a monster. It was a vacancy. A space that expanded when someone believed they didn't matter. And vacancies always wait. The hospital returned to normal operations by morning. Official explanation: electrical anomaly, stress fracture repair, temporary hallucination among fatigued staff. No discharge. No body. No record. But this time, we had each other's names. Each other's acknowledgement. The system board flickered once at 2:17 a.m. the following night. No new assignment appeared. But in the faint reflection of the polished hallway floor, I thought I saw it. A distant crescent. Smaller now. Further back. Waiting. It doesn't move. It waits. And it will always wait. For the moment someone stands alone in a corner long enough to believe they aren't seen.
Closing chapter.
Room 312 was never about architecture. It was never about faulty systems or missing files. It was about something older than the hospital itself, something that waits in the places we pretend don't exist. It feeds on isolation. It grows in silence. And it thrives where denial replaces truth. The staff erased the blueprints. Administration deleted the records. But they couldn't delete the room, because the room was never the prison. It was the doorway. So here's the question you need to ask yourself tonight. What corners in your world have you stopped looking at? What doors have you agreed not to open? Because ignoring something doesn't make it disappear. Sometimes it makes it stronger. If you've made it this far, comment 312 was never empty. And before you sleep tonight, if you hear breathing in the corner of your room, don't look. And whatever you do, do not open 312.